So the previous lecture, we started off with concepts of virtual ground, and then we went through common mode rejection ratio for single-ended output as well as differential output. This lecture, we are going to start talking about the input referred offset voltage. We are going to look at where it comes from, how to calculate it, as well as one of the, as I said before, one of the main motivations in what we are doing right now is we are trying to build an op-amp, and we are looking at practical limitations of the op-amp when we design it using real world components. As you're designing the op-amp, you would like to have as high gain as possible, and we're going to look at various techniques using which we are going to increase the gain of the op-amp. Let's get back to our blackboard now. We're going to talk about non-ideality of the op-amp, DC offsets, and today we're going to learn all about them. What is DC offset? So DC offset is the input DC voltage that you need to apply at the input to make the output equal to 0. Let me explain. Input referred offset voltage, VOS. Let's say you have an amplifier, okay, plus minus, and you're supposed to get the output or multiple outputs. Then what we expect is the output to be A times V plus minus V minus. Ideally, if both V plus equal to V minus, then output V out should be equal to 0. However, because of the manufacturing variations, or there are multiple causes, you can have an offset, and that offset you can refer it at the input as VOS. The sign is not important because it could be plus or minus. If I apply equal and opposite voltage, so I can make this ideal op-amp, meaning everything is matched properly, or there is no offset inside this op-amp, and I'm bringing this offset as input referred offset, bringing it out. Then I would have to apply externally, I will have to apply this VOS to get the output 0. Okay, maybe I'll take an example to make it even clearer. So the input referred offset voltage VOS can happen because of multiple things. One is systematic offset. So this could be just by bad design. If you don't bias things properly, if you don't match your VDS. So for example, when we have a current mirror, and if you don't match the VDS, then the current will be different in the two sides. So VDS mismatched. So these are all design related problems. Okay, and the other one we don't have much control over, which is random offsets, and these are happening because of process variation, which means if you have two transistors, they will not be exactly identical. They will have differences in their properties, and due to those properties, you're not going to see, their performance is going to be different from each path, and as a result of which you will see an offset voltage. So let's draw a schematic, and with the schematic it would be a lot clearer what I'm talking about. Let's take a really simple diff pair example. This is the positive input, this is the negative input, and then this would be your positive output, and this is your negative output. So you're going to measure V out over here, let's say. Now R1, R2, M1, M2. What are the different things which could give rise to offset? Okay, first one is obvious, which is resistor mismatches, and the second one would be the transistor M1 and M2 mismatches. So you could have in the transistor, you can have W by L mismatch, which means that both the transistors are drawn with certain W by L which are exactly the same. However, when the chip is manufactured or is processed, then the W for the left side is slightly higher than the W for the right side, or something like that. Length is different. So W by L mismatch for these two transistors, M1 and M2. Also, you can have VT mismatch, VTH mismatch, and this is due to the doping and things like that. You can have mobility mismatches, oxide thickness mismatches, and things like that. So these are the multiple factors which can cause mismatches. What we can do is we can, let's say if I apply a same voltage to both sides, I short both the inputs and apply some voltage here, VDC. If there were no mismatches, then output should be exactly equal to 0, because both sides will have identical current flowing through it. The resistors are identical, the devices are identical, and when you take a difference between the two sides, then you should have 0 output voltage. Unfortunately, because of mismatches, you will see some offset coming at the output. You will have some V out 1. Then what you do is you apply an equivalent voltage in that case. How do you measure DC offset? You apply a equivalent plus minus VOS such that the output equal to 0. So this is called input referred offset. The way then to calculate would be, first of all, you connect the two inputs to the same voltage such that everything is in saturation, and you measure your V out, which is with V plus equal to V minus. You measure your V out, differential output voltage, and you divide that by the gain, differential gain, and that would give you equal to VOS, input referred. So then if I apply an equal and opposite voltage of VOS, then you're kind of nulling out the output to give you V out equal to 0. So this is the definition of input referred offset voltage. So let's look at different components of offset and try to understand how do you calculate the offset. So first one would be, let's say you have VTH mismatch. I'm just going to show only this part because that's the only relevant part. So you will have two transistors. One of them will have VT1, other one will have VT2. Let's call it VTH1 and VTH2. Then it should be fairly straightforward by Kirchhoff's voltage law that I can model this as a delta VTH over here, because I am finally applying the voltage right like this. This delta VTH is VTH1 minus VTH2 at the input. Only if the transistor mismatch is there, then VOS, input referred offset, will be straightforward, will be equal to VTH. What this is telling you is that if VTH1 and VTH2 are different, let's say they are different by 10 millivolts, then I can apply an input referred VOS which is equal to minus 10 millivolts. So that way you will get both the currents to be identical. Both the currents in these two branches will be identical, and it will behave as if there is no offset in these two transistors. This one is pretty straightforward, the contribution due to delta VT. Now let's look at resistor mismatches. If you have resistor mismatch, so for example, one resistor is R, the other resistor is R plus delta R, or you can also use R plus delta R divided by 2, R plus delta R, R minus delta R by 2, something like that. Okay, then you can say that due to just the resistor mismatch, my V out is going to be, V out due to resistor mismatch will be I times delta R D in this case. Okay, because we call this is the drain resistor, delta RD or delta R, whatever you would like to call it. Let's call D because for the MOSFETs we call it drain resistor, right? And for bipolar we call it RC. If there is a mismatch between the two resistors, then I'm going to get an output voltage which is differential output voltage, okay, which will be equal to I times delta RD. What would be the input referred VOS? So VOS, I'm just writing things a little bit more in detail. Input referred, and due to R mismatch. And that would be equal to, you look at the final output and you divide that by ADM, which is your differential voltage gain. So in this case it would be I times delta RD divided by, what is the differential gain? It's GM times RD. We have done this before. So then this is going to look like I divide by GM times delta RD divided by RD. Similarly, you can also, if you remember, the device if you remember the MOSFET equation, right, I equal to K divided by 2 VGS minus VT square. Right now I'm just going to assume mismatch in this entire quantity. We just looked at VTH mismatch, and you can look at K, which is mu n Cox. So K is equal to mu n Cox W by L. I'm going to group these together and look at the mismatch effect of this K, right? So you can also prove it to yourself that follow the same method, the VOS input referred due to K mismatch will be equal to, you can convince yourself that is I divided by GM, and then here you will get delta K divided by K. Whenever we use this, these are average values, because you'll have K1 and K2, and we look at the average value and we look at the differential value delta K. If you remember, K1 is equal to K average plus delta K divided by 2, K2 will be K average minus delta K by 2. So we kind of calculated offset due to input referred offset due to VTH, input referred offset due to delta R, and input referred offset due to delta K. You don't just write all three offsets and just add them together, because these are randomly varying quantities. So you have to take a mean square addition of all these randomly varying quantities, because this is a statistical effect, right? So the VOS overall is equal to VTH square plus I divided by GM, I square GM square, and then in the bracket we can do delta RD divided by RD square plus delta K divided by K square. Again, as I said, I, GM, RD, K, these are all average quantities. So this is the way you calculate the input referred offset for a MOSFET diff pair. You can do the exact same analysis for a bipolar junction BJT amplifier, and we'll go through that. So for BJT amplifier, and you will see kind of a pattern developing which will help you, kind of apply that logic every time. So in this particular case also we will apply an offset between the two. This is our plus minus VOS, so that output is zeroed out. So this would be RC1, RC2, and this is plus minus V output. Okay, this is VC. So again, if you have R mismatch, the same equation holds true, which is I times delta RD, and then the VOS offset at the input due to R mismatch is then given by I delta RD divided by the gain of the amplifier. The gain of the amplifier is GM times RD. You can see the same relationship, I divided by GM times delta RD divided by RD. And what is I divided by GM? GM is equal to I divided by VT. So this will look like VT times delta RD by RD. VT is KT over Q, which is 26 millivolts at room temperature. What's the other parameter where you can have mismatch? So you have these two transistors Q1 and Q2. You could also have mismatch in its area of the two bipolar transistors. That would kind of result, it would manifest itself as a saturation current, IS mismatch. So then how do we deal with this? When we apply same VBE, or if you short the two bases together to apply the common voltage, then under that condition you will have VBE1 equal to VBE2, and we'll figure out what's the difference at the output, and then we'll divide by the gain. Okay, so first we will assume that I'm applying the same voltage at the input, and let's assume that the Q1 has IS1, Q2 has IS2. Since I'm shorting the two inputs, which is this plus and minus, to calculate the offset, you can say VBE1 equal to VBE2, which is plus minus and plus minus here. So this gives us, using the bipolar equation, VT ln of I1 divided by IS1 is equal to VT ln I2 divided by IS2. If you compare these two equations, then this would give you I1 divided by IS1 is equal to I2 divided by IS2. So this will give you I1 divided by I2 is equal to IS1 divided by IS2. So from this you can prove it to yourself that delta I divided by I, which is delta I is the difference between I1 and I2, I being the average value of I1 and I2. That should be equal to difference in IS divided by average value of IS. So that's the equation we got from here. And now we can measure the VOS at output. So VOS at output will look like delta I, because this will result in delta I in the two sides, and that will get multiplied by the resistor. When you are doing offset calculations, you don't want to look at all of them together at the same time. You would want to analyze effect of one parameter, offset in one parameter first. For example, when you are analyzing effect of IS mismatch, then you keep the resistors the same, both the resistors to be the same. Otherwise, you will get a very complex equation and you cannot make a head or tail out of it. We analyze it this way, and at the end we will make a root mean square addition. Delta R I R. So this would then become, this is equal to delta, what is this value? This is going to be delta IS divided by IS times I times R. So it comes from this equation right here. Then VOS input referred would, because of IS mismatch, that would be this whole value divided by the gain of the amplifier. So it would be delta IS divided by IS I R, and then we divide that by GMR. So that would be our input referred offset. So this will, if we go through this carefully, let's see, the resistor will cancel out, and then you will get I divided by GM and delta IS divided by IS. So you can pretty much see, similar behavior. You're getting this I divided by GM in all the cases. If you look at the bipolar offset overall, would look like Vt square delta Rd divided by Rd square plus Vt square and then delta Is divided by Is square. This is again the RMS addition, mean square addition. You can pretty much compare this to our previous equation. If you remember the MOSFET equation, which is right here, here also we saw I by GM factor, and out here also we have what is I by GM for a MOSFET. So let's write that over here. GM is equal to 2I divided by VGS minus VT, which is 2I divided by VD sat when we bias the transistor. So this will tell us it's I divided by GM, which is equal to VD sat divided by 2. And this we have seen it many times. For a bipolar transistor, it's the thermal voltage VT, and for MOSFET transistor the comparable quantity is actually the VD sat of the device, or VD sat divided by 2 in this case. So when we compare the two cases, the bipolar case versus MOSFET case, what is the value of VD sat that you choose? We typically choose something like 100 millivolts or 200 millivolts. So let's say if we choose 200 millivolts, then I over GM will be equal to 100 millivolts. So this is VD sat is a design value that we choose just to make sure that the transistor is operating in saturation region and not in the subthreshold region. In a MOSFET case, I divided by GM will be somewhere, ballpark number will be 100 millivolts, and in a bipolar case it's the VT, which is 26 millivolts. So obviously you can see the offset voltage in case of BJT is much smaller as compared to a MOSFET. Also here we have another important parameter, which is the VT mismatch. So that will also be a dominant contributor in your VOS calculation. In the BJT case, there is no concept of VTH, threshold voltage, right? So we don't have that. So what you would end up when you compare MOSFET versus a BJT amplifier, you can get a really low offset voltage natively. With the BJT, it could be somewhere in the range of 1 millivolt, and in case of a MOSFET, you may be able to get something like a 10 millivolt offset voltage. You have an advantage when it comes to BJT to get much better offset performance, offset voltage performance. However, there is one problem with the BJTs, and that's what we're going to talk about now, which is non-existent in the case of MOSFETs. So BJT has something called input offset current. So you can also here you can say that these are your two inputs, Q1 and Q2, let's say R and R. R doesn't matter in this case because we are only looking at base current. Let's say transistor Q1 has a beta of beta 1 and the Q2 has beta 2, so there is a beta mismatch, right? So then you will have correspondingly you will have IB1 base current and you will have IB2 base current. Even though the two currents are identical, you will have different, because everything else is matched. Just because a beta is mismatched, you will have different value of base currents. So you could say that, hey, my IOS is equal to IB1 minus IB2, and IB1 is given by, let's say this is 2I, and let's say the two currents are identical, I and I, then it's I divided by beta 1 plus 1, and then I divided by beta 2 plus 1. So this one you can approximate to be I, and you will have delta B divided by beta square. So beta is average value and delta B is the difference between the two. We can also rewrite this as I divided by beta and delta beta divided by beta. What is I divided by beta? I divided by beta is approximately the base current, average base current, and then you have delta B beta divided by beta. So this is average base current. We are making an approximation. We are ignoring beta plus 1. The plus 1 part we are ignoring, and so we are saying beta plus 1 is equal to almost equal to beta. Okay, so that's why we are able to get it. So this is the way you calculate your input referred offset current. We just finished talking about offset voltage and how do we compute that for both bipolar as well as MOSFET amplifiers. Another important parameter when it comes to design or choice of op-amps when you're using in real life is something called input common mode range. Okay, so we're going to learn about that. As the name suggests, it's the input related and it's a common mode related number, and it's a range. So how do we dissect this? Basically, it's the range of input common mode voltage for which of an op-amp for which all the devices are staying in saturation for MOSFETs or in active region for BJT. So let's say we have an op-amp like this. So this is plus minus. Then what we would do is we would short the two, and then we would just apply something VCM, voltage VCM, and then we would take this VCM, this would be, let's say, ground, and let's say this is your VDD or VCC. Now our goal is to make sure that the op-amp is going to behave like an op-amp, and for the op-amp to give you large gain, the devices have to be, if you have MOSFETs there, MOSFET diff pair, then they have to be in saturation, and then if you have BJT diff pair, then you want to make sure it's in active region, right? Otherwise the op-amp will refuse to work as an op-amp. It's the range of voltage. For example, you start with VCM equal to 0, then maybe some devices are going out of saturation or in cutoff, so you start from 0 and you take it all the way to your VDD, and then this is your VCM, and then let's say only in this range the devices in the op-amp, they are in the correct region. So then this becomes your input common mode range, VCMR, okay, input common mode range, VICMR. So let's take an example so it'll be clear. Since we are doing the VCM common mode input voltage, then you can use the half circuit analysis that we have done before. So I'm going to do one for the MOSFET, then you can do something like that for BJT as an example for yourself. So here is our, so in this case I'm not going to use a ideal current source, but I'm going to use a real current source. The real current source could be a single device which has a bias voltage, V bias, or it could be a cascode device. And now it will start becoming clear to you why we were learning about if you remember, if you have a cascaded current mirror, then you need Vt plus 2 VDSat, minimum voltage, right? So this is the place where it is useful. So in this particular case, we are just going to use a single transistor as a current source. So this is M3, and this is going to provide me 2 times I bias current, let's say. So this is my M1 and M2. So when we do half circuit of this, it's going to look like this. Again, this is a common mode, so we have to also look into the current source over here. In the differential case, this node will be virtual ground, and when we do small signal analysis, we don't take the current source into account and we just ground that. But we are looking at right now something like a DC or large signal analysis of the input differential pair. So this is your resistor, let's call it RD. So this will be half M3. Okay, originally if the M3 size is, let's say M3 size is 2W by L, 2L3 and W3, then this would be W3 by L3. That would be the size of half the device, right? Imagine I'm applying a input voltage here, VICM at the input, and this is our V bias. What is the maximum VICM that I can have, as well as what is the minimum VICM that I can have? So let's say we start taking this VICM down. I start taking the VICM down, then what will happen is this particular node, the source of M1 will also start going down, okay? And then at certain point, this voltage will become so low that the transistor M3 will be at the verge of getting into non-saturation region. And when would that happen? So the minimum voltage to keep transistor M3 in saturation will be plus minus VDSat. Right now, let's just use the number 3, VDSat 3. And what is the value of VGS? 1. So then you can pretty much tell, as you start taking VICM low, the only thing that happens is this transistor M3 will come out of saturation. So we want to define our VICM minimum is equal to when M3 is at edge of saturation. So VICM min will be equal to, first will be VGS1 and plus VDSat 3. As long as we ensure the input common mode voltage minimum is VGS1 plus VDSat 3, then M1 and M3 will be in saturation region. Let's calculate the value. This will be, if we this would be VTH plus VDSat 1 plus VDSat 3. So you can kind of choose a ballpark number for VDSat, and generally we like to say all VDSats are equal, just for the sake of the quick getting a ballpark idea, right? So this will be equal to 2 VDSat. And you can immediately tell what is the value of the VTH. VTH is, let's say, 500 millivolt. And what is the value of VDSat? Let's say we choose 200 millivolts, then this will be 2 times 200 will be equal to 400 millivolts. Then this would be equal to 900 millivolts. So you can immediately tell that, hey, if I choose a NMOS diff pair, then my minimum input voltage, DC common mode voltage, has to be at least 900 millivolts to keep the device in saturation. The only way I can reduce that is by reducing my VDSat. So if I choose VDSat of 100 millivolts, then I will probably get 700 millivolts. This is the way you do your minimum input common mode voltage calculation. Now let's look at the maximum VICM. So for that we will again do something similar. If I would start taking VICM up, what will happen? Then this node will start going up, okay, because it's still, the VGS has to be constant because it's carrying the current I. The transistor M3 will never come out of its saturation because it has drain to source voltage, which is now getting larger and larger. However, what will happen is, the transistor come out of saturation because the voltage at the source is going up and voltage at the drain is fixed. So let's figure out what that condition is. So let's say VICM max is equal to M1. This is when M1 enters non-sat. VICM max will be equal to, that would VICM max, okay, minus VGS1. That would be the voltage at the source. Let's call this node A, voltage at node A, and that should be equal to, start from top, VDD minus I bias R D And then since transistor M1 is going to be on the verge of saturation or non-saturation, then that would be plus VDSat1. I think I made a mistake. This should not be plus, this should be minus. I started from VDD, I went down, that would be IR drop, and from here to here there will be plus minus VDSat1. We started from VICM and we went down, and then we started from VDD and came down. And so that's what this equation is all about. So VICM max minus VGS1 is equal to VDD minus IR minus VDSat1. Okay. So you have to convince yourself, go through this equation one more time on your own. If this is the case, then we can rewrite VICM max. That's what we are trying to figure out. That will be equal to, what is VGS1 will go on the other side, that will be VTH1 plus VDSat1, that will be VGS1 plus VDD minus IBRD minus VDSat1. This is your drop across resistor. This quantity VICM max, if you look at it, it can be, there are two positives, VDD plus VTH. If IBRD is less than, because this is something like 500 millivolts, and if IBRD is less than that, let's say IBRD is 300 millivolts, then this would become VDD plus 200 millivolts. So you may say, oh, how can that be? It can happen. Your drain voltage has to be only VDSat above the source voltage, right, for the saturation. So because of that, this can happen. What does this really mean? That my input voltage can be higher than VDD. In reality, generally what we have situation is you have one stage driving another stage, and all of them are supplied using VDD. The input itself, maximum voltage at the input itself, is limited to VDD. It cannot go beyond VDD, and many times it will be VDSat below the VDD. And when we look at the output stage, it will be obvious to you, but that's what will limit. So what this particular calculation is telling you is that when I go up for an NMOS transistor diff pair, then I don't have to worry about it as much. It's only when I go down, when I'm trying to look at the minimum voltage, then I have to make sure that my current source stays in saturation. So that kind of puts a limitation over here of 900 millivolts. We can do similar analysis for BJT, and I'll leave it that for you to do. So in case of BJT, I'll just BJT diff pair, I will give you the result, which is VICM minimum. So in case of BJT, instead of VDSat, you will get VCESat, which is equal to, let's say, 300 millivolts. In this case, it would be VBE1 of the diff pair transistor plus VCESat of the current source, and this is your diff pair. Generally VBE, we have ballpark numbers, 0.7 plus VCESat is 0.3, so here you can say it's about 1 volt. Okay, minimum VICM. VICM max, that would be equal to VCC plus VBE minus VCESat minus IR. This would kind of come out to be, let's say, VCC plus 0.4 minus IR. So this would be the maximum input common mode voltage for the BJT. I would like you to kind of do this yourself as homework to try it out. This concept is important because this is the only range in which the op-amp will be able to work. Beyond this range, you will not be able to guarantee all the transistor in saturation or in active region, and as a result, you will not be able to get the gain that you desire. The next thing we are going to talk about, so far I have just shown you diff pair with a resistive load, but you could also, what are we trying to do, right? We are trying to get as much gain as possible. So if you have a resistor, then I can increase the resistor, and then I can get higher and higher gain. However, when you increase the resistor, the IR drop keeps going up. So if the IR drop keeps going up, then it becomes very difficult to bias the circuit with a given VDD. This is always not practical, increasing the resistor. So what you do then is, one good variation is differential pair with current mirror load. What does this mean, first of all? So let's draw the schematic. It's so far we were only using one type of device. Now we are going to use full features of CMOS process, which is both PMOS and NMOS devices. So if you look at M3 and M4, it's pretty much, you can quickly tell from the pattern recognition that I've been trying to tell you about. It looks like a current mirror. So whatever is current flowing here, it would be replicated over here on this side. When we look at the half circuit, then we say that, hey, this is my virtual ground, and if you apply VDM divided by 2 here minus VDM divided by 2, then I get currents like this. This would be a GM VDM divided by 2, and the other side would be minus GM VDM divided by 2. This particular current has to flow through the M3 device, and it will be reflected over here. So you will see the current over here will be also GM VDM divided by 2, along with, since there is a negative sign, you can say that the current going up is also GM VDM divided by 2. If I change the direction of due to this negative sign, you can then say that the total current coming out will be GM times VDM. I'm going to go through this one more time separately. This may look a little bit fast, but using a current mirror on the top, you can invert your current from one side and add it to get a higher differential gain. Current mirror load gives you two advantages. One is you increase the gain of the amplifier, and we're going to look at that, why does it happen. And the second one is we get a differential to single-ended conversion. Most of the amplifier that we have been using, they have been looking like this, right? So you have a differential input and you have a single-ended output. So this particular structure natively gives you differential to differential input to single-ended output, and along with it, it will give you higher gain. How do we analyze such a complex circuit now? I'm going to teach you a couple of tricks, and then these tricks you can use for analysis of various circuits. For a single stage amplifier, let's say this is the box, and then let's say this is my plus minus V in, and let's say this is my output. So I'm going to put everything inside a box. So what we are trying to do is we want to figure out voltage gain, and that would be equal to AV, which will be equal to V out divided by V in. You can take a couple of steps and quickly figure out how to calculate this gain, and that's what I'm going to show you. So first thing you do is something called figure out short circuit GM, and intentionally I'm saying it capital GM. So what you do is you take your amplifier and you apply the input voltage here, and then you short the output and you measure the I out. So this is your plus minus V in. GM is equal to I out divided by V in. So this is called your short circuit GM. And the second thing you do is you calculate R out. And in this case, you put V in equal to 0. This you pretty much know. You take your amplifier and you short the inputs, and then you, just like you calculate during Thevenin, you can just calculate R out. So you can apply V test and you measure I test and R out. And so this with V in equal to 0. Then after doing this, your voltage gain is given by AV is equal to minus GM times R out. This is a step that you can take to figure out any complex circuit. You can apply this theorem and figure out the gain quickly. And I'm going to go through a couple of examples so that you feel comfortable about it. So what are the steps? First is you short the output and figure out what's the short circuit GM. So I'm shorting the output and I'm measuring the current in the output, signal current in the output. So we are only applying small signal AC inputs now. So that would be my GM of the circuit, and then I would short the input to 0 and calculate what's the output impedance. It's the GM times R out, which will be our gain calculation. So let's apply these steps to a couple of simple circuits and then a little more complex circuits, and it will be very clear to you how to do the calculation. First step is our circuit that I just showed you. In this particular case, we can say that first step is I would short the output and measure what is the current. What is the current going in here? We said that this is our virtual ground, and that's why we connect AC ground to it. And then on one side I'm applying VDM divided by 2, other side I'm applying minus VDM divided by 2. So there is a current flowing here which would be GM times VDM divided by 2, and the current, because of the negative sign, will flow the other way around, GM times VDM divided by 2. This top piece looks like a current mirror, so the same current, this will flow here, and then that has to be mirrored on the other side. So you would see GM's VDM divided by 2. If you look at this node, these two currents, this and this, they will add in phase. So you will get GM VDM. That would be the current that you're going to get. Your capital GM, which is the GM of the entire circuit, is going to look like GM is equal to I out divided by V in. So what is that? That would be equal to GM VDM divided by VDM, because applied differential voltages plus VDM divided by 2 minus VDM divided by 2. So the difference between them is equal to VDM. So this kind of looks obvious now, the answer. This is just the GM of the big box is equal to GM of each diff pair transistor. So the second step is we would like to figure out, hey, what is the R out, right? So in the second step, we would again do the same thing. And now I'm calculating R out. If M1 is connected to ground, then there will be this voltage will also look like AC ground, because the current doesn't change. The bias current doesn't change on the left side. What is the R out looking here? Since both the transistors, the PMOS and NMOS, M4 and M2, they are in saturation, looking up you should see R out P, and looking down I should see R out N. R out being the output transistor, output resistance of the transistor, right? Then R out will look like RON in parallel with ROP. Looking at these two, the voltage gain, that will be AV will be equal to GM times RON parallel ROP. If you remember earlier, I had taught you that sometimes you can use R out, sometimes you can use GDS. It's just according to your convenience. And whenever things are in parallel, I tend to use the conductances, and whenever things are in series, I tend to use the resistances. So in this case, I have basically two things are in parallel, two resistances. So then you can also write this as, if you allow me, RO is equal to 1 divided by GDS, let's say. Then you can say that the gain AV is equal to GM divided by GDS of NMOS plus GDS of PMOS. You can pretty much tell now what do I need to do to increase the gain, right? Because what is the goal? Our goal is to increase the gain of the op amp. So what's the first thing, obvious thing in your face is I can increase the GM. So how do you increase the GM? I can increase the current, I can increase W by L, and that way I can get some increase in the gain. The other part is I have to reduce this conductance, or I have to increase the resistance, increase the output resistance. So if I have to increase output resistance, we already learned the trick, is we can do cascoding. Because what does cascoding do? Cascoding will give you GMC ROC multiplied by R out of a transistor, right? So this is, let's say, 20 type of number, then you can get 20x multiplier in your gain calculation. The third thing we also can do is you can add another stage. This is not cascoding, but this is rather called cascading, and we're going to learn about that too. Our goal is, how do I get higher and higher and higher gain using this, right? Let's go to the next step, which is cascoding. How do I increase the gain of this diff pair amplifier? So what we would do then, I'm just going to draw it simple. Again, don't panic, because now the number of transistors are going to start increasing in our analysis. But as I have told you before, you should not get worked up because you see so many transistors, because I have taught you patterns, right? So you have to look at different patterns of transistors, groups of transistors together, what are they called and what is their function. All that stuff we have already done. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so when I do cascoding, you want a This is our PMOS, and if you have a paper and a pencil, you should again, get comfortable drawing the schematics, because only when you draw the schematics yourself, you will get the hang of it. And then here I'm going to connect it like this, and this cascode transistor I'm going to connect it to a bias voltage. Okay, so what this does is basically it gives you very good current mirroring. This is your PMOS transistor, and then we have our diff pair. Yeah, now in the diff pair also I am putting in cascodes, and you will see the reason for that. So we can call this VB1, VB1 as a cascode voltage, and those can be easily generated using bias circuits. And those bias circuits, we're going to address them a little bit further down the road. And this is your current source. Okay, current source, we already learned how to do that. And this is my VIP and VIN, and this is my output voltage Vout. This diff pair amplifier has 8 transistors, but not to worry, because I'm going to explain each and every one of them. First of all, we understand M1 and M2 is a diff pair, and M1C and M2C, they are basically cascode devices. And what does that do? That increases the gain or increases the output resistance, this RO looking down and RO looking up. What's going on here is, if you look at the top 4 transistors, that looks like a high swing cascode current mirror. What is the property of this particular high swing cascode current mirror? It allows this output voltage to be close to plus minus VD-SAT here and plus minus VD-SAT. Okay, if you remember what we learned about high swing cascode current mirrors. Otherwise, you had to have VT plus 2 VD-SAT. In this particular case, you only need 2 VD-SAT. It gives you, going up at the output, you have very good signal swing. You can tell that the top piece is doing the current mirroring, and you can do exact same analysis to calculate the GM. So the GM for this will look just like the previous case, because the job of the current mirror is to just mirror the current from left to right. Okay, the top current mirror. The capital GM will again look like GM12, which is GM1 or GM2 of the transistors, which is equal to GM of the input diff pair. And what is R out? Now this is what is interesting. So R out will be R out up in parallel with R out down. What is looking up? Looking up is going to be, if you remember the equation, it's going to be GM4 and R out 4 of cascode transistors, and that multiplied by the R out 4. This M4 transistor will have an R out 4, and that gets multiplied by the GM R out of the cascode transistors. So this is the GM R out of the cascode transistor, and R out 4 is the M4 transistor. And this goes in parallel with, again, here we look at RO2, which is the R out of the M2 transistor, and that gets multiplied by GM2C, RO2C. The gain of this transistor, the GM R out, will multiply with the R out of this transistor. So this is something that we have already done for cascodes and should become a second nature for you when you observe it. So now what does that look like? All the GMs and R outs are equal for the heck of it. Then your gain AV will look like, AV is GM R out, which is equal to GM of the input diff pair, and then along with that you will have GM2C, RO2C, RO2 parallel with GM4C, RO4C, RO4. It's the reason I've changed the order. This is the GM and this is the rest of the R out, right? So this will look like, if all the GMs are equal and if all the R outs are equal, then we're just trying to get an idea of ballpark numbers, right? So then this AV is going to look like, you can convince yourself it should be half, because these two quantities will be equal, and it will be GM times GM R out times R out. So this looks like half GM R out square. You can see that in the single stage, single diff pair with single current mirror, we just got GM R out divided by 2. Now in this case, I get half GM R out square. The gain is squared, which is a large number. So this is one way you can improve your gain. And there are many different configuration of a amplifier design, and I'm just going to go through 2 or 3 key ones so that you understand the concepts. The next thing I also talked about, way of increasing the gain, would be adding a second stage. How do we do that? So in this case, we will not use a cascade amplifier. We'll just use a simple diff pair amplifier with current mirror load. This will only give me the gain of half GM R out, right? If you remember at this this output node. So I can, let's call this VO1. Now I can add another stage, second stage, which is looks like this, and I'll explain how that works. I can add a common source stage, okay, and this would be this is a PMOS common source stage. So this is transistor M5, and this is my V out now. The first is VO1. Now here, when you look at such stage, right, there is one more trick that you need to remember. Is many people forget that, and I would like you to learn it and use this trick. How do you figure out which one is a positive input or a negative input in an amplifier, right? Let's say I give you this amplifier and this is my output. What you do is whenever you see a transistor, right, and if the input is applied at the gate, let's say, then when you go from gate to source, the direction of the signal would be the same. Makes sense, right? Because if the gate goes up, if the transistor is carrying current, then the source has to go up also. However, when you look at the sign from gate to drain, then there is an inversion. So this is the thing that you need to remember when you do this. So for example, let's see, we are trying to figure out if M1 is positive input or M2 is positive input. What we are expecting is V out to be a positive output. Let's say we apply a negative input here. Then that negative will give you a positive here, and that positive will give you a negative over here. So definitely this doesn't work because I need my V out to go to be a positive, right? So then what you can do then, you have to obviously invert the signs. I can apply negative here input, then this will be positive, and this positive will go to the gate, and from here to here it will become negative, and that negative will come here, and then it will become positive. This looks correct. The negative input is looking correct over here. And similarly, I can do it for the other input. We'll have to do a few examples so that you get familiar with it. If this is positive input, then the drain of M2 will be negative, and so the gate of M5 will be negative, which will give me positive at the V out. So definitely this is a positive input. It's basically taking care of inversions. So quickly, how do you tell which is a positive input and which is a negative input? We will do this many times if it's still not clear to you, and let's figure out what is the VO1 divided by V input. So VO1, V input is plus minus, difference between the two. So if you look at VO1, that's going to look like minus GM1 and then RO, R out of 2 in parallel with R out of 4, looking up and looking down right here. Look at the V out divided by VO1, that will be another negative sign, and that would be GM5 times RO5. Note here, I am assuming the current source is ideal. If the current source also has an R out, then it will again show up here as R out of current source. What is our overall gain? V out divided by V input, GM1 times RO1 parallel RO4 times GM5 times RO5. So you can see I'm going to get GM square type of effect over here, just like the cascade case. This is called a two-stage amplifier. We kind of learned a lot of things in this class. The bipolar part of these same examples, I have included them in the notes, and they should be really obvious and straightforward to you when you go through them. And if it's not clear to you, then you can also ask us the question, and we'll try to explain that again. So far what we have been doing is we kind of started with small circuits and build it up to 2 transistor circuits, differential pair. We build pretty much a standard two-stage amplifier. But so far, all we were looking at it is DC performance of the amplifier, meaning we are only looking at low frequency performance. We would start looking at frequency response, which is the next stage that we are going to get into. Is we really need to understand very well how the frequency response works, and how do you, if you keep increasing the gain, then you have to make sure the amplifier is stable also, and you want to make sure that to make the amplifier stable, you have to understand the frequency response and what do you need to do stabilize the amplifier. So those are the things we're going to talk about, and also we will do some more of feedback analysis. Those are going to be real fundamentals. Again, we're going to go through. They're going to be very important for you to understand as basics.